The School of Humanities and Communication at CSUMB proudly presents Confessions of a Radical Chicano doo-wop Singer with Ruben Guevara and George Lipsitz.
Thanks to Phang Nguyen for that lovely introduction. Thanks to all of you for being here. Ruben Guevara and I have come a long way to spend a short time with you because we think it's important. We think there's nothing more important about this moment that we think about what is the work we want our work to do? What is the purpose of the things that we've learned in classrooms? What is the value of the art and the music, the dancing that we do in a time where we live in a society, I hope it's no secret to you, that is suffused with hate and hurt and fear. We're living in an age that Vijay Prashad calls the age of the strongman, the age of monstrosity, the time of the ache of humanity. This is the hand we've been dealt by history. And it's sometimes so horrifying that we want to scurry off to a private refuge. You know, we want to deal only with those closest to us. We want to block out the news. My life partner won't let me say the name of the President of the United States unless he's impeached. You know, she won't let the word be said in our house. And it's understandable that horror after horror is presented, an age of hate-filled mass shootings, of children in cages on the border, unaddressed, unprosecuted police killings. And that's all the fast violence. You might think about just with the slow violence of housing insecurity, of hunger, of unequal opportunity. And this can be overwhelming, but we're not overwhelmed. We come from a history of people who have often been broke but never been broken. We've come from a history of people who've often been short of resources but never short of resourcefulness. And we need to turn at this moment in history to the survival strategies of aggrieved people. And those strategies are sometimes political, but sometimes they're just how do you find something left to love in yourself and others in a society that makes people so unlovable? How do you find the confidence to go on, to stand up, to say, this is my perspective, to write something down on paper, to speak out in a classroom? How do you find the capacity to look to your right and look to your left and realize that there's not going to be any Golden Gate open. There's not going to be any knight on a white horse coming in to save us, that if things get better, it's up to us. The great Malcolm X used to say, things will not get better unless you make them better. So we're here today to figure out how to make them better, how to have some dignity and decency, how to live in a society which seems to be unraveling at the seams, and yet is filled with the kinds of people that Phang Nguyen mentioned to you in his introduction. We lose faith in a lot of things, but we never lose faith in people, in their capacity to be resilient, their capacity to have resolve, their capacity to resist, but also their capacity to restructure and remake the world in which we live. So Ruben is going to talk to you about this book, which he's recently published, Confessions of a Radical Chicano doo-wop Artist. It's many things. It's a counter-history of the last 70 years of the city of Los Angeles. It's a history of a creative person being involved in the early years of rock and roll, being involved in experimental theater, creating performance art, being a program director at arts institutes. He's been a teacher in continuation schools and schools for people with special needs. He's been a teacher in LA Unified School District. He ran an organization, was it City Arts?
Arts for City Youth.
Arts for City Kids?
Youth.
Arts for City Youth, which touched thousands of people. And that program was often the place where somebody sang their first song, painted their first painting, made their first poem. And so Ruben has had this remarkable life, and we're not here to celebrate that. We're here to think about what does it mean to have a life of struggle? How do you live with decency under conditions that you don't totally control? One of the The book starts with, as he'll describe, with a kind of burning. He was burned by the sun. He said, I came into this world on fire. And throughout the book, there are these series of burnings, of buildings burning down, of industrial explosions, of riots in Los Angeles, but also of a burning desire to change, a burning desire to know, a burning desire to produce and create something better. And toward the end of the book, he says, you know, that these flames that have been threatening, these things that have been poison have also been medicine. These things that have been toxic have also been a tonic. Basically, the things that can hurt you can also help you if you know how to use them right. He says that his job in life has been not to fear the flames, but to stoke the flames, kiss the fire, create an art out of the conditions of his life. And so my role tonight will be to be running the PowerPoint and playing the music, but my role also was as series editor of the series that this book is in. This is the 51st book that we've produced. The previous 50 books have won prizes. The authors of them are winners of the MacArthur Genius Award. They're the people who have established the canon of what ethnic studies has been over the last 25 years. But this is the book I'm most proud of. This is the book I most wanted to do. This is the book that I think makes our statement. Because those other books, and I don't disrespect any form of knowledge, and it's hard to write a book. I respect everybody who writes a book. But the books started from far away. They started looking from the university, from the library, from behind somebody's computer, looking out at a problem. Ruben's book really started on the streets of Los Angeles, in Echo Park and Boyle Heights, in what is now Koreatown. Started in a journey that he made with his Japanese American friends to the Manzanar internment camp to honor the people who had their lives disrupted and were unjustly incarcerated there. His perspective comes from his current participation in the Fandango Obun, a ceremony that's held at the Japanese American Cultural Center in Los Angeles every year that brings together Japanese Obun dancers, son jarocho, fandango musicians and dancers, and West African drummers and dancers. And these groups are all different, and yet they're all the same. And we profit from our similarities, we profit from our differences. I've learned so much from Ruben. I'm glad that we have some time to spend together with you tonight. He'll talk. It's really your obligation to have a question, a comment, a compliment, a statement in response, because this may be the only time, you know, that this exact configuration of people are together in one room in one night, and we ought to make good use of it. And we also have some copies of the book. You know, you might have somebody, you don't know what you're going to get them for Christmas. It's coming soon. We have 4 copies of this book at a special discount rate. If you read the book and are unhappy with it, I'll buy it back from you. I make that as an absolute pledge. But part of it is, these are the tools we have to deal with the things that have been handed to us. We don't control a university. We don't control a conservatory. We don't control a television network. We don't control a Hollywood studio. But we can talk to whoever will listen. We can listen to whoever will talk. And together we can forge solutions. So to help us forge solutions tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce the great Ruben Funkahuatl Guevara.
Well, I'm done. I can go now. No, George, my mentor, my guardian angel, my editor, my close friend, and now my DJ. I don't know, you know, I'm just a rock and roller, man. I survived it all, and I'm here with you, and I'm going to share some of my experiences and how I survived it, why I survived it. Yeah, you know, when I met George about over 20 years ago at a conference at UCLA, and I was doing a performance piece there with a co-writer also, the introduction, Josh Kuhn. And George told me that he would use some of my music in his classroom, and that he used that as, you know, a topic to work with the students. I was blown away. I said, "What? Are you serious? What? Using my music? Why?" He said, "Well, it's important. And I think you should write an autobiography. You should write a memoir someday, autobiography to document it and talk about it. Not just of that song, but all the other work that you've done." I wasn't ready. I said, "No, man, come on. Write my autobiography. I can barely write my name, but I'll try. But wait a minute, I don't think I'm ready. No, I'm not ready." So 20 years go by. Well, maybe not 20. See, 2012, whatever that is, from 1998, whatever. I was at the memorial services for Johnny Otis. Johnny Otis was a famous LA R&B artist, pioneer of the 40s. He discovered many great performers that went on to become super successful. Etta James, the Lester Phillips, people that you may not know, but they became very big in the R&B world. And Johnny Otis, for me, was my big idol. What's trippy about Johnny Otis is that he wasn't African American. Everybody thought he was, but he was a Greek American, up here from Berkeley. Then had his bands playing up here in Oakland. So Johnny Otis represented this strange but beautiful man that made records with unknown artists. He would find artists at his nightclub, in South Central, where he found little Lester Phillips, little Julian Herrera, legendary Chicano singer from East LA. And so Johnny Otis to me represented LA music, LA rhythm and blues. He was the man. And so Johnny passed away in 2012. And I went to the memorial service. And lo and behold, sitting in front of me is my man here, George Lipsitz. And he got up and gave one of the most beautiful testimonials for Johnny Otis. You think this was nice. Man, what he gave for Johnny Otis was just wow. And he came back and sat down, and I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, "George, it's time. I'm going to do it. I'm going to start the memoir tonight." And I did. 2012, a couple of years go by, trying to draft your life is pretty daunting. Looking back, what was important? Why should I write it? Who cares? What's the point? What's the point? What's the point? And so I started to find a thread of a series of ups and downs, right? I mean, we all have ups and downs. We all have challenges, we have failures, we have successes. So maybe that's my theme, surviving ups and downs, surviving dreams that are broken and they go up in smoke. And how do you keep on going? Why do you keep on going? So I thought maybe that might be of interest to a reader. Not necessarily me, but of someone that goes through all these hurdles. I started to write it 2012. I wrote 1 million drafts. So by 2015, George was shopping it around, and it wound up at the University of California Press. Thank God, thanks to him. It was released last year, April, and I've been going around to schools like this and talking about it. And it's a blast. I mean, I can't believe I'm doing this, right? I mean, I'm just a rock and roller, man. And what can I say? Smart. How can I be smart? But you don't have to be smart. You just have to tell the truth, be honest, and be open, and share our common humanity. Bottom line. And so it's an honor to be here. Thank you, Professor Wynn, for inviting us, and thank you for showing up. I'm going to start by reading the prologue from my book, if I may. I came into this world on fire. My tío Javier thought I looked too pale when I came home from the hospital, so he put me out in the sun to get some color. He never came back. I suffered second-degree burns on my newborn face, arms, and hands. I was tightly wrapped in sheets so I wouldn't scratch myself. I was taken to several doctors, but they couldn't heal the burns. I'm sure I flipped out a little. I cried nonstop. I was only 5 days old. Finally, my dear great-aunt, Tia Victoria, cured me by giving me a Mexican potion of goat's milk and indigenous herbs. Miraculously, I recovered. Well, that's the way my life started out. That's pretty much the way it's been. A steady series of burnings, a steady series of miracles, that kept saving my mind, my face, and my life. My life. A long, absurd, hilarious, surreal serenade of being pushed to the edge of my singed psyche. But through leaps of good faith and good karma, I'd managed to dive off of that cliff into the forging heat and pulse of the heartbeat, the crucible of the soul, and live to tell about it. I'm past 70 now, and I might only have a couple $100 in the bank, and I might not know when the next gig will come along to pay the rent. But my life was never about playing it safe in the cool shade anyway, or about becoming rich and famous. It was about making music and making love, rocking and rolling with the punches, and letting life keep the beat. I grew up in a musical family. My father was a musician from Mexico, came up here in the late 30s, early 40s. He was part of a famous Mexican trio called Los Porteños. He came up here on a tour of LA promoting a record of his that they had out. And they played at a very famous theater in downtown Los Angeles called $1 Million on 3rd and Broadway. It was a famous theater that introduced artists from Mexico, and they would play for the Mexican community in Los Angeles. Well, my mother heard about the band, that they were in town. She was a fan, so she went to see the concert. And she worked her way backstage. I was born a year later. I was raised with my grandmother. My dad was always on the road, so I was raised with my grandmother. She lived in a little barrio in Santa Monica called La Veinte. It was made up of two families from Mexico, primarily the Gutierrez and the Casillas family. And we were the only Mexicans in an area there. It was about a, 7-block radius. We had our own markets, we had our own bakeries, we had our own hot dog stand, taco stand. It was all a really beautiful little familial family enterprise and little enclave. So I was raised with my father teaching me to sing. And I learned, one of the first songs I learned was Amor, love. And that kind of became a life mantra for me, that song. And what I loved about singing was I was brought out to house parties, people would come out and, isn't it cute? I'd sing and I would get all this attention. And it was wonderful. I said, wow, if you sing, you're going to get some attention. You're going to get some loving. That really interested me. And so I thought, wow, I'm going to be a singer. That's what I want to do. I want to sing. Well, I went on and I did some work, some groups. I had some groups, doo-wop groups. I love doo-wop music, vocal group harmony music. Very romantic. You learn how to dance with a woman for the first time. You learn how to navigate the distance. Not too tight, not too loose. So it's an education that I don't know if you have it these days with the young people. I think they just dance up and down, and there's no way of really communicating, connection, and. So it was a good lesson to learn how to dance, and doo-wop music was the background, was the soundtrack. So I did some doo-wop groups in the middle school. We called it junior high then. But in high school, I formed a group, and after high school, we recorded our first single called "My Beloved One." Again, love, right in my theme, "My Beloved One." I wrote it, and we sang. It was a duo, and a piano player. We opened for Richard Berry. At the time, was a major R&B artist. He recorded the song "Louie Louie." I don't know if you remember that. Dun, 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 dun. Well, I was on a bill with him at the El Monte Legion Stadium in 1962, along with the Olympics, another popular R&B group from LA. So I thought I was on my way. Hey, this is cool, man. I'm gonna make it as a singer. I got a record out. I'm doing some gigs, but that dried up. My partner, he got married. He had to get a day job. So the group broke up, and I was just left thinking, what's next? My mother, at the time, in '65, was also an actress. She got some work in Hollywood as an actress in television and film. And she knew some producers at a television station, Channel 7, ABC, and they were broadcasting a show called Shindig in the mid-'60s. Shindig was a very popular nationally syndicated show that featured people like the Rolling Stones and major groups of the '60s. So I had the audition opportunity, and I went, I did it, and I got it. So I was, oh man, this is it. Now I'm going to make it. Now I'm really going to make it. Well, there was a caveat. I had to change my name. And I said, wait a minute, change my name? Why? What? What's wrong with Ruben Guevara? What? No, we got to change your name. And but before we discuss that, let me tell you who's going to be on the bill. Bo Diddley. Bo Diddley, damn. I mean, that was my idol as a kid. One of my first 45s was a record by him called Bo Diddley. I think it was 54 or something. He's going to be on the bill? Oh, man. Who else? A new young singer, her name is Tina Turner. I said, Tina Turner? Whoa. I was a big fan of hers, obviously. Beautiful woman, powerful singer, beautiful legs. And so I said, oh yeah, man, well let me see. What name do you want to call me? What is it? They said, J.P. Moby. J.P. Moby? Ruben Guevara, man, can you make it closer to that? I didn't know at the time that there was a singer from Texas. His name was P.J. Proby. He went to England, became a big hit over there, the big star. He came to LA to do this show, and they had problems with the producers and him. They got into fights. So they're going to get back at him through me. I didn't know this at the time. I learned it later. So, okay, I get the audition, I get the show, I agreed to change my name. I'm going to be with Tina Turner and Bo Diddley, man. What? That's amazing. So we're going to show a clip from that performance. This is 1965. I'm 22 years old, and this is my big splash, my big opportunity. And that's Bo and that's Tina. Bo Diddley used to make his own guitars. That was very cool about him, too.
From the ABC Television Center in Hollywood, Shindig is brought to you by New Carnation Instant Breakfast, the mix that makes milk a delicious, balanced meal. Tonight, Shindig brought the Jewish stars for a great new discovery. Mr. J.P. Moby!
So there I am as a kid, thinking I'm all bad and cool and everything. But again, I was dancing that hard and I was putting that much energy out for guess who? For Tina. I wanted to get Tina's attention. So during the break of the taping, she's sitting down in the audience alone, and I walk up to her and say, hey, Tina, I'm Jay. There she is now calling me. And I said, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Jay. My real name is Ruben, but they're calling me Jay now. And just want to tell you I'm a fan of yours. And hey, I looked around for Ike. Ike wasn't around, so what's happening after the show? What are you doing? Tina was very gracious. She just said, yeah, I'm married, and I like the way you sing. And how'd you learn to sing like that? She asked me. I said, well, born and raised in LA. I'm an R&B singer, and black music is my thing. And because there weren't too many Mexican soul singers around at that time. It was very unusual. But I grew up listening to R&B and black artists, and that was my thing. James Brown, Otis Redding. So then the next part was going to be that we're going to be doing the finale together, the closing of the show. And so I went to my dressing room. I was sitting there with Bo Diddley. We shared the dressing room. It was very cool. And sharing the room with me was very much a supportive guy. We talked about rock and roll and surviving it, and don't let it get you down, man. It's gonna be tough. Are you ready for it? I said, hell yeah, I'm ready for it, man. I'm ready for anything. Meeting you has been the greatest thing in the world, man. And, let's go out and rock this show. So we went out there and we closed it up. This is the ending. Yeah, so you know, I got screen credit and everything. I got paid. Everything was good. So I felt like I was on top of the world now, right? I made my big debut and rocking with Tina Turner and Bo Diddley. You know, I figured my future was set. Well, the producers of the show decided to turn the show into 2 half-hour episodes a week rather than one hour show. And people didn't tune in. And before I could get back and do my thing, the show was canceled. So a big disappointment, and yeah, so what do you do? What do you do with a big disappointment? Look on for the next project, work on the next project, do something new. Just keep your energies going, you know. Once you get over the frustration of it being, thinking that it's over, start over. So I went back to LA City College, and I wanted to study the composition. I wanted to study musical composition. I had a girlfriend at the time that her father was a producer at Universal Studios. He produced Star Trek and a couple of other shows, and he said, go to school, get some training, and we'll try to get you some work over here at Universal. So I said, yeah, man, I'll do that. Went to LACC, studied musical composition and classical music, avant-garde music. I enjoyed that. And so then after, while I was going to school, I was also being introduced to theater, avant-garde theater, which I never knew about before, because I couldn't ever afford to go to theater, way out of my range. And I saw some theater that was very powerful, works by Jerzy Grotowski, Theater of the Cruelty, Samuel Beckett, all the absurdists, and I was really intrigued by the theater as an art form. And it was the middle of the Vietnam War era, right? Late 60s. And a lot of protests going on in the streets. You had this American Indian movement was starting up. You had, of course, the Black Civil Rights movement. You had the Chicano movement was starting up. So a lot of political activism in the air. And I decided to write and compose a theater piece called Who Are the People? That's the poster up there for it. And it was an anti-Vietnam War gospel rock cantata with a gospel choir that I was singing with at school. They were in the piece, and a band, some Afro-American modern dancers, and 3 actors and a troubadour. Anyway, it was my way of talking about the Vietnam War and what a stupid thing and atrocity that was. So it got a good review. The LA Times gave it a tour de force. I thought it was great, but it needed some work, and I agreed. But I thought, hey, this is my direction. You know, I think this is where I'm going to go, towards theater and making statements, positive messages about the times, social commentary. So the show was up, and we ran 2 weekends. You see down there where it says At the Factory. The Factory was a nightclub in Hollywood that was run by Frank Sinatra. They called his group the Rat Pack. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford. Anyway, they were major Hollywood stars. They opened up this club for themselves and for the public. So we did that show there, and it went well. You know, we sold out. But then we did 4 shows, and we sold them all out. I thought, okay, this is it. Theater, that's it. You can do music, you can do dance, you can do message. And so that's my direction at the time, 69. Well, this was 71. Around the same time, right before that, in 68, Frank Zappa, crazy rock and roller, experimentalist, avant-gardist, was kind of popular in the Hollywood scene, the hippie scene. He was, how many have heard of Frank Zappa? Okay, well, you've heard of him. You know who he was. I had heard of him, but I knew he was an experimental guy, and his first album was called Freak Out, and it was really revolutionary. Just his own approach to making music and concept albums. It was a double album, first time ever, vinyl. And there was an inscription on the Freak Out album that said, "The present day Pachuco refuses to die." And I'm thinking, well, how does this crazy guy know about Pachucos? Pachucos were Mexican-American zoot suiters in the 40s. And the zoot suit was like a symbol of self-reliance, self-determination. It was a stylistic symbol of saying that they were somebody, you don't judge me just because I'm a Mexican, but here, look at my style. And I got a crazy cool zoot suit on. So I kind of revered the Pachucos, and that was my background from some of my family members, but how did this guy know about it? So he put a record out a couple years later called Cruisin' with Ruben and the Jets. It was a doo-wop album, kind of a parody album. This is 1968, in the middle of crazy psychedelic rock and roll. So this guy puts out a record of doo-wop music that it was no longer being heard. Nobody was listening to doo-wop. Doo-wop ended around 61, 62, as far as a genre. So I decided to go see it. Well, my girlfriend brought me the album and said, look, there's an album here called Cruisin' with Ruben and the Jets. It's about doo-wop music, and that's what you used to be about. And the lead guy's named Ruben. Should we go check this guy out? So we did. We went to the Shrine Auditorium, and we're all dressed in our fine, fine clothes. She was a high fashion model and very beautiful and dressed up real nice. And I was wearing my Clint Eastwood hat and my leather jacket and my leather pants and my green leather suede boots. I was looking pretty good. And we're walking towards the backstage, and the guards didn't even bother to ask us for ID or nothing. They let us right in. It was like kind of a cosmic moment or something, So we walk right in, and I walk up to Frank and says, hey, Frank, what's up, man? I'm going to thank you for, this was during intermission. I want to thank you for bringing back doo-wop. I used to be a doo-wop singer. And thank you, man. It's, this crazy psychedelic rock is just driving me crazy. So it was so nice to hear doo-wop coming out of somebody. So he looked at me, and I said, by the way, my name is Ruben, and I used to sing a little doo-wop in my day. Took a long look at me and said, oh, that's a grand name. You still singing? I said, not really, man. I'm back in school. I'm studying composition. I'm doing a whole new thing. But as well, if you ever decide to drop off some demos, drop them by my office. I never did. I decided that I would just continue back at LACC with my studies with composition. Not until 1972, after I did that Who Are the People, supposed to be for. Again, like I said, my direction now was into rock theater. That was my goal now. I could make statements, social commentary, and that was what I wanted to do. I saw the Jets album, Cruisin' with Ruben and the Jets, also as a form of theater. I saw it as a kind of form of Chicano rock theater. I thought, I don't know if Frank is really consciously doing that, but I interpreted it that way. I ran into an ex-musician, band member of his that was an old friend of mine, and he asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm into rock theater, I'm doing that now, and I just did this play over here a couple, last year, and I'm into that. He said, well, that Frank is a little bit into rock theater too. He just did an album called Billy the Mountain, which is a kind of a rock opera. And this musician just got off the road doing that, performing that, touring it. He said, I'm going up to Frank's house tonight, you want to come? Hell yeah, let's go, man. I met him a couple of years ago, but I never followed up on his invitation to drop off some demos. But let's go. Anyway, went to his house. Frank opens the door. And right away he says, hey, Ruben, what are you doing, man? What's up? Hey, Frank, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to see you again. This and that, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? Well, I'm studying composition. I'm studying some classical guys, avant-garde guys. I don't know if you've ever heard of Bartók or Stravinsky. Bartók, Stravinsky. I know those guys. Yeah. It's pretty heavy stuff. Yeah, man, it's turning me on. It's crazy. I love it too. And, but I know you're into doo-wop, Frank. Can we listen to some of your records? And I wanted to hear his collection, right? So he pulls out his collection of 45s and 78s, and we're listening to all these great doo-wop groups from LA. And in between, we were talking, well, did you ever hear this piece by Bartók called Music for Strings, Percussion, and Celeste? He says, oh yeah, great tune, man. So we were having this conversation between classical music and doo-wop music. Hours and hours went by of just this great, great conversation. Around 4 o'clock in the morning, he turns to me and says, oh no, actually before that, I said to him, Frank, I thought that your album, the concept record, Cruisin' with Ruben and the Jets, I thought that was perfect Chicano rock theater. I don't know if you understood that or intended it to be that way. He said, well, I never really thought of it that way, but yeah, I guess it is kind of that. And I said, well, you know, I'm into theater now too. I just did this show. And oh yeah, another thing, the LA Times reviewed me, and right next to my review was a review of his concert at UCLA. So we were right there back to back to each other, which I showed him that as a little bit of, you know, credentials. And he finally at 4 o'clock in the morning, he turns to me and says, how would you like to stage a real Reuben and the Jets? I thought about it for a second. I said, wait a minute, man, I don't know, Frank. Rock and roll, man, it's too many dead ends. And he took a long look at me and said, well, build your own roads. Huh, okay. Well, that sounds interesting. That's an interesting, smart remark. And it made sense. You know, I could put a band together. I already had a fan base. It wasn't like starting from scratch. So I did. I took it up. I said, okay, Frank, let's do it. He said he'll produce my first record. We'll go on tour. And it sounded too good to pass up. I put a band together. It was a multiracial band. We had a Japanese-American alto sax player. One of the ex-members of the Mothers was playing baritone. Another guy from Hollywood playing tenor. And the other guys were from East LA, Chicano musicians, Hammond B3, bass and drums. It was a great band, great band. We auditioned for him, he loved it, this was good, we're on. We're gonna do it. Well, okay, this was our second record, Con Safos. Okay, well let's go with this. There's a track on here that I had to come up and that I had to step up and sing because one of the singers in the band got sick and he couldn't sing the lead on this particular track. So I had to step up and do it, and I never sung this song before, and it was kind of daunting because one of my favorite doo-wop tunes. Now this is 1973, doo-wop is dead, but the idea for the band that I said was I wanted to be a Chicano rock theater band with doo-wop music, with rock and roll and blues, all a mixture of LA music. And so we recorded the tune. I nailed it on the first take. I don't know how I did it, but here it goes, To Be Loved. Yeah, can't hit that note anymore. Love to hear it. So the band went on the road, and we did the whole rock and roll fantasy tour thing. We played Max's Kansas City in New York, a famous rock and roll club. And the beautiful thing about that experience was on the marquee was Bob Marley and the Wailers had just played there. And then they had Reuben and the Jets. And following us the following week was Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. So, wow, you know, we were in some really good company, you know, and feeling really good about it. But the guys got a little out of hand, and like every rock and roll band, we get a little crazy on the road. We get blackballed from the Holiday Inn, from every Holiday Inn in America. So we got, we had trouble, we had fun, but too much fun. And the manager got wind of it and he didn't like it. So the band gets back and he fires the band. Good for me, good for them. I didn't care. I was done, basically. It was time to move on. I did my thing. The rock theater idea didn't really get over to the guys. They didn't get it. They just wanted to be another band from East LA. They didn't care about. So the band, we go crazy. The band gets a bad rap. We can't play anymore. And the manager cuts us off. And I could have continued. He said, you can form a new band and continue. A famous producer, Steve Cropper, songwriter, Midnight Hour, Dock of the Bay, a major guy, wanted to produce me on a solo record with a new band. But I was burned out, and plus I heard he was dating my ex-girlfriend. I didn't like that. I said, no, I'm going to pass. Big mistake, but that's what happened. So it was time now to do something new. I sold my car. I went back to LA City College and started taking Chicano studies. Now we're talking about 74, yeah. The band broke up in 73, yeah. So I'm back there, and then I discovered this whole new world of ancestral histories, indigenous ancestral histories. And I thought, man, that's something I got to look into. What is mine? I wondered. And I didn't really know. There was talk that we had indigenous blood on my father's side, but it was never talked about too much. And it was never, because in that time, if you're Mexican, you didn't really identify indigenous, because the indigenous people were considered, lower than the low. And so I decided to go check out my ancestry. I sold my car and I took off in Mexico to look at the pyramids. And also another motivation was the play, Who Are the People? I had a gospel choir, like I said, so it was kind of focused on African-American music and African-American culture and heritage. So I felt it was time now to go into and try and do something with my heritage after Chicano studies. So I went down there, I went to Palenque. Before I went to Palenque, we stopped at Guadalajara. And while I was there, I was trying to cross the street and get directions to the hotel, and I asked the gentleman, dressed in a suit, very nice, seemed like a nice guy. So I said, ¿Dónde está el hotel, whatever it was? And he said, está por allá, it's over that way. And where are you from? ¿Dónde eres? I said, well, yo soy de Los Angeles, I'm from LA. I'm a Chicano. And he looked at me and said, Chicanos don't have a culture, you're a mongrel people. And it blew my mind. What? Before I could hit him or get back at him, he crossed the street, the lights changed, and he was gone. I was thinking, damn, what? Chicanos don't have a culture? I'm thinking, what? This is 1974. At the time, we didn't have too much published yet in terms of writing, literature. There were some musicians, but they were probably never known in Mexico. Richie Valens and Lalo Guerrero, Don Tosti from the 40s. Anyway, I was really struck and shocked by that statement, that observation. I get to Palenque. I see this magnificent temple of the inscriptions. I started climbing the steps. And this is a piece from a play that I put together a couple of years ago based on the book of this experience. I'm supposed to be on top of a pyramid there. I'm moving up, walking up the steps, and I sit down and I asked myself, what am I? What am I? I'm not American, I'm not a WASP, I'm Mexican ancestrally, but not necessarily culturally. Where am I? What am I? I remembered a line from my Chicano studies class that said, Chicano is not an ethnic term, necessarily. It's a political term. It's a Mexican-American activist. And someone that supports the culture, defends it, but not just Mexicans, not just Mexican-American, but all oppressed peoples. And that really struck me. Wow, that was a great definition. I'm sitting there on the step, remembering all this, and so a Chicano is a Mexican-American activist. So a Chicano artist is someone who creates and celebrates and contributes to the culture as an artist. So that's it. He contributes like a sculptor. I'm thinking, okay, I'll be a Chicano culture sculptor. I climb the steps, I'm up at the top, and I yell out to the world, Yo soy Chicano! A Chicano culture sculptor. Y qué cabrones. Thinking about the guy in Guadalajara. Now we'll see about Chicano not having a culture. And that was my commitment, right there, then and there, to come back to the States and create works that reflected my culture, my history. Not just mine, but Mexican history as well. And also to support the struggle for civil rights. And that's when I became an activist, really. So I became an artist activist, in a sense. Okay, so I come back to LA, and I met a record store owner that later started a label, Rhino Records. Now check this out. I'm back from Mexico, and I'm working in a record distributor, pulling records for different record stores. The owners come in, they would pick up the records and take it back to the store. Well, Richard came in and ordered a bunch of Rubin and the Jets albums. So I had to go pull my own albums off the stock, off the shelves, and it was for his store. And he looked at me and said, "Hey, you look like this guy. It can't be you, is it?" "Yeah, it's me, man. Yeah, that's me." So, well, I'm starting up a label, he said, and this is 1976. And he said, "How would you like to record a doo-wop version of the Star Spangled Banner?" It's 1976, it's America's bicentennial, right? 200-year anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. I thought, what a great radical Chicano cultural sculptural piece that would be, right? To twist and flip the national anthem. So I agreed, yeah, let's do it, man. So here is Star Spangled Banner.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for our national anthem. Bam 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 bear 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 Steve. Can you see by the dawn early night was a fine evening and the twilight's fading. Looks like everybody's
It got away from me, man. So yeah, that was the Star Spangled Banner, and I'm still waiting for the call from the Dodgers for me to come and sing it. I haven't got the call yet. I wonder why. But again, it was an idea. This is an idea of subverting the national anthem. How radical is that, right? And gave it a new twist, and I think it's more fun than the actual tune. I think it's more, I think it's more hip. You could dance to it, and yeah. So the flip side is America the Beautiful. And it's one of my favorites. I think one of my favorite doo-wop tunes that I've been able to record after To Be Loved. So here that is, America the Beautiful.
I'd like to dedicate this song to my girlfriend, America Sanchez, and especially to my 3 dogs, Benny, Marta, and Baby. Oh, spacious sky. Oh, man, oh, purple mountain majesty. Shed his grace on me and climb that tree. From sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful. Oh, you're so beautiful with your spacious skies. And those amber waves of rain. And those purple mountain majesties.